Hello and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News channel. Today we're going to talk about why, if you're an investor, you want regulations. You actually need regulations. Now, if you're a crypto purist, you might not want them, but if you're like an investor that wants to make money, which I believe like something like 95+% of the people in crypto are, you really want regulations. You don't want to stop any kind of regulations. Of course, you want regulations that are favorable to you, but the spate of regulations I think that is coming to the US would actually probably be favorable because there's several people in Congress that are actually pro crypto. You want cryptos to be declared probably like commodities. That would be really nice. And you want certain restrictions placed on like, scam artists and hacks and stuff so companies will actually buy into crypto, like the big institutional investors, because that's really what's going to make crypto soar up in price. And that's what we're after for prices. Now, if you're like an anarcho-capitalist, I don't really know what to say to you except that you probably A, have never really read history, B, are extremely naive, and C, probably don't understand how humans actually work. Anarcho capitalism just isn't really going to work in the real world. It's just like how communism doesn't really work in the real world. Like if you have like complete capitalism, with that, just like pure capitalism, capitalism's goal isn't to actually provide everyone with a stable, it isn't really provide everyone with like a nice quality of life. That's not actually what it does. Capitalism's goal eventually is to concentrate capital in the hands of very, very few people, and everyone else is dirt poor. That's generally what capitalism is. Think about Upton Sinclair in the jungle. Everyone else is working like 24/7 in those factories. And then like there's a couple of really rich fat cats up there who are having the good life. Like pure capitalism in its goal, in its end, would actually probably end up with a system of lords and serfs, where you have a couple of big corporate people like owning everything, and everyone else working as subsistence workers or almost like slave-like workers. Pure communism, not much better. You basically have everyone being kind of like poor, and the government basically controlling every facet of every life. Now, you could have like a mix like China, where it's like a capitalist economy, but the state controls everything and sets certain rules, where you have people being like fairly well off, but you don't have any political freedom. But if you have pure communism, you get like China back in the 70s, where everyone's like piss poor and the government controls everything. However, that may not necessarily be any worse than everyone being piss poor and having like five or six fat cats control everything, which would be basically like unrestrained capitalism. And like the 1920s was kind of like the Roaring Twenties was kind of almost an unrestrained period of capitalism. This is before we had all the agencies, before the SEC and all this stuff. And it was really a couple of robber barons basically owning all of society, all the wealth. John D. Rockefeller, um, his wealth for the time was actually comparatively greater than anyone's wealth right now. So that's actually going to be a problem because people like J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, like U.S. Steel, and those people, they out because there weren't regulations, so they basically use predatory practices to squeeze the life out of their competition, and then basically have a monopoly which actually control people's lives and the country's means of production. Rockefeller was extremely notorious. The reason he got so rich is because he employed underhanded tactics all the time. So he like not only used predatory practices to squeeze his competition, he outright sabotaged his competition. He basically would pay kickbacks to like he actually like would actually pay kickbacks for the railways to only haul his oil and not haul other people's oil, which actually would be illegal now because you can't pay someone not to haul someone else's product. At least I think it's pretty illegal. And the other thing is, sometimes when he really, really wanted to stop something, he would just outright blow up freight cars, which obviously is illegal. But the thing is, it was hard to prove, and it would still be hard to prove those guys ran everything. And the thing is, you could say, oh, we can just drag them to court. But the problem is, rich people have more money than you. They can hire better lawyers. And they can actually drag out the court case either A, long enough so where you don't have any more money to maintain the court case against them, or B, they have better lawyers, so they're probably going to win the court case anyways. Rules don't apply to rich people under like an anarcho system at all because they can just hire the lawyers to always win against you on legal terms. There's no rules, there's no regulations for anything. And the thing is, if you say, well, we can just get a bunch of people to burn their house down, well, they can hire people too with their money. So at that point, it just becomes whoever has the biggest gun gets to run things. And that's really not a government type that really espouses like productivity or advancement or anything. like I said, capitalism at its end just basically concentrates capital in the hands of very few people. Communism, on the other hand, concentrates it in the hands of the government. And the common people, well, they're really, really screwed under each pure system. That's why the systems that have actually worked around the world have always been a combination of the two. Like it's a happy middle ground in between the two, where you have capitalism, but you have strict regulations. So that's why we actually need regulations in the crypto industry. Because without regulations, these big companies are not going to want to step in. And the big companies have a lot of money to buy the Bitcoin. Now, the problem with Bitcoin right now is like the distribution is actually still very concentrated at the top. It's actually much more concentrated than our fiat money. I think like Satoshi Nakamoto would have many, many times the amount of wealth that even Elon Musk or Bill Gates actually has right now. If you actually look at like he owns like 1 million Bitcoins out of probably like 13, 14 million that are left, because there's 21 million, but a lot of those got lost. So I'm guessing there's 13, 14 million that are left. He has like 7% of all the world's wealth. There is not one single person in this world that has 7% of the world's wealth. And I'm counting like dark money that like Vladimir Putin has. I think he's actually richer than all those guys put together. I mean, not put together, but he's richer than like all those guys individually because he owns like Russia. But even I don't think he has 1/7 of the world's wealth. And like Satoshi Nakamoto and some of the others would actually too. Like imagine like how much money, how rich Grayscale would actually be. Imagine how rich Grayscale would actually be at this point, or even MicroStrategy, or like the early miners. The concentration of wealth is so high near the top of Bitcoin. So there needs to be certain rules, certain regulations to help with like wealth concentration, wealth distribution, at least initially, so everyone can sort of get a piece of the pie to start. Now, everyone wouldn't be equal, obviously. That's impossible. You're really not going to regulate equality, but there needs to be like certain rules and regulations on what can be done and what can't be done in a certain order. And only with those rules will the general public actually trust crypto and will it be really accepted into the mainstream, and will only then, when it's regulated, when it's classified, when there's rules, will like these big banks, these big institutions really pour a lot of money in. And the big thing is like when you get it regulated enough, you will have institutions like retirement accounts, pension funds come in at a massive scale. But without regulations, you're never going to get that. With regulations, that's going to happen. And that could actually boost up the price of crypto 10, 20, 30, 40, 50x. And that's when we can actually, us early investors, can actually get pretty rich. Now, even if you follow the rules and regulations, yes, you have to pay taxes, etc., etc. The thing is, like you might have to give up like 40% of your earnings. But if you make $100 million, you still have $60 million left. And that's a lot better than having like $60,000, which you have right now. Yeah, you think about the 40 million you have to pay in taxes, but you don't really think about, but you're missing out on the 60 million you get to keep. And you might not ever make that 60 million without the regulations. So if you want crypto price to go up, you do want regulations. You want favorable regulations, but having no regulations is not conducive to you getting rich. So hopefully if you're an investor, you understand the segment, you understand why you actually need crypto regulations, and why only with regulations will you get really, really rich off a small initial crypto investment. Because without regulations, these coins, these huge coins will not skyrocket up, because these pensions, investment funds, retirement funds will be very, very hesitant to pour a lot of money into them. Once you get fully regulated and the government okays it, I can see something like Fidelity or BlackRock pouring like $1 trillion. Only after it becomes fully regulated, which is probably going to take a few years. And that's why I want it to become fully regulated, so Fidelity and BlackRock would pour in that money, and my investment in Bitcoin would go way up, because, or not in Bitcoin, but in these other coins will actually go way up, because companies have poured in that money and pushed it through the roof. So hopefully you understood what I said. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.